Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed, and today for stepforward.com we will be looking at PHP, what exactly PHP is, how it works, and what makes it different from other languages. So first of all, the main thing is, what is PHP? PHP is a server-side scripting language. Now what that means is that PHP will be running on the server side. In the web paradigm, the server will host PHP files and PHP will be installed on that server. All the variables, everything will be created on that server, not on the client side or the browser. Secondly, PHP is a scripting language. Scripting language means that it is an interpreter based language. It will take the source code, compile it, interpret it line by line and send it back to the browser. But every time it will have to reinterpret the code. This is the difference between a normal programming language, compiler based language, and a scripting language. Then after understanding that PHP is a server side scripting language, we come to the next part. Next is that PHP is open source and PHP is cross-platform. Now what that means is that you are free to use PHP as your language of choice on your system. You don't have to get any license for that. It is open source. A community is behind it, which is making it possible for other people to use PHP. Secondly, PHP is cross-platform. That means that whether you are using Linux, Windows, Macintosh, for all these variants of operating systems, PHP has a version for you. You can easily install it. For Mac it is MAMP, for Windows it is WAMP, and for Linux it is LAMP. Next, PHP was originally conceived by Rasmus Rutherford in 1995. Basically it was a student project in which he wanted to count the number of visitors to his website. So it was initially a CGI language, and originally PHP meant personal home page. But later, when it was transformed into a proper project, a proper open source work, it was renamed to PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. The acronym P is still PHP, Hypertext, and Preprocessor. Then PHP is one of the most popular languages to write server-side code on. There are other languages also, but PHP is exceptionally popular. Now, how PHP works? PHP, as I said, that runs on the server side. So the client side will send a request using a browser, or any web browser will send a request to the web server. Web server can be Apache IIS, Nginx, or any other web server that can host PHP as a product, as a server side language. So the client side will request for a particular web page. Request, this word request is a technical word and it will be used again in the future coming lectures. So it is a technical word. A page is requested for the web server. The web server will find that page on its root folder, and if that page is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, anything that can be run directly on the web browser, it will be sent back to the client. But in case of PHP, which is a server-side language, this page then will be forwarded to the PHP process. PHP process is a running process, a running daemon that will be running on the server side. So Apache most popularly, or any other web server, will simply forward that page to the PHP processor, and it will ask it to translate it for it. In other words, interpret it. So it will interpret it line by line, look for PHP blocks, and then return the translated page to the web server. And that page will be again forwarded to the client side. And this forwarding is called response. Response is again a technical word. So translated page is sent to the client side, and as soon as that page is sent, this whole thing is this PHP process won't save that page and it will be discarded from that side. If a page is refreshed, it will be reinterpreted. So let me now open my folder for running sites. I'll create a file named index.php. open it up in text editor. Okay, and let's open it up also in the web browser. I'll do site1.com. Site1.com is basically a site configured on my own system. So in it, HTML, it should be PHP. Okay, of course there is blank because I haven't written anything on it. So let me write some code over here. We'll start with standard HTML code, that is doc type HTML. This is basically instruction for the browser that we are using HTML5. HTML head tag, let's close the head tag also, then the body tag, and the body tag will be closed, and we'll just let's add a heading to this, heading 1, let's close it, heading 2, and in this we will write PHP first page. Let's check it up in the browser, and yes, it is working, PHP first page. And so basically this page was sent because it was PHP, so it was sent to the PHP processor. PHP processor looked for all the PHP blocks in that page and translated it into understandable HTML, CSS or JavaScript for the browser, and then sent it back to the client side as a response. Okay, so but in our case, if you look at this is the page, but in this page there is no PHP block whatsoever. All the tags are standard HTML, but still PHP will look for it line by line. For each line it will look for this code. If you look at the source code that is returned, it is 100% the same that with which we coded ourselves. So now let's make some changes, some PHP changes to this page. PHP code is written in using a standard PHP block, that is less than sign, question mark, PHP, and it's closed with a question mark and a greater than sign. Anything that is between this less than question mark PHP opening tag and anything that is in between the closing tag, question mark and greater than sign will be interpreted by the PHP processor, and it will be converted. So the browser which will receive the translated page will never see this PHP, instead it will see only the HTML. So for us in this example we will write echo. Echo is basically a function to print the value. It's just like printf in C language or console.writeline in C#. So I'll write echo using single quotes, PHP is running, and let's run it. Yes, the text will appear. Now have a look at the source code that we got. Now look, there's no PHP code here, no PHP block, no echo, because it is translated and this part was supposed to output this PHP is running. Echo means print, so printed on this page. So after it is translated, the only thing remaining will be is in between these h1 tags is PHP is running. So so it is working fine. Now let's echo is a special type of a function in which we can these brackets, of course these brackets have to be there, but we can even skip these brackets, and if I try it now, it is giving me the same output. So echo is an exceptional case that it allows us to skip the brackets. Otherwise PHP strictly follows the syntax of C language, C# or Java, JavaScript, because all of these have the same syntax. All lines end with a semicolon. Okay, with that done, now let's move forward. We'll move to variables. Let's create a variable. In PHP, all variables start with a $sign. We don't have to declare a variable type. We don't even have to declare a variable explicitly. All variables are of variant type by default. That is, based on their contents, what they will hold, their types will dynamically be changed. So all variables have to start with a $sign. They can be a capital A, a small a, underscore, I meant capital alphabets, small alphabets, and underscore. Capital alphabet and small alphabet means two different variables because PHP is a case sensitive language. So let me create a variable $num, and if variables are of this type, that you have to write two names. So there are two notation. This is the Camel notation, that the first word has to be small and the second word, every coming second word, has to be a capital. This is one form of writing variables. The other is all is lowercase and each word is separated with an underscore. There is no particular preference to any method, but I personally like this method, and in the coming tutorials I will be using this approach, that all words are small and underscore. Plus we can of course use numerics for variables. So let's get back to a simple variable named num. Let me get rid of it. Okay, num equal to, and we'll give a value to this. So let me write it 50, and let's print the value of num. $num, echo $num. Okay, let's save it and view it in the browser. Refresh it, and yes, we can see 50 written over here. Let's have a look at the source code, and yes, 50 is there. No variable, everything was created on that side. It is only supposed to output. Let me comment it now. So you will see that the page will be blank because nothing is outputted to the browser. If we comment it, comments are of multiple types, but mostly these two type of comments are used, similar to C language: single line comment and block level comment. There are of course other approaches also, like the hash comment, but we won't go into that non-standard approach. Now let me comment it, save it, refresh it. Nothing is displayed over here. Take a look at the page source. Nothing is outputted over here. Okay, so that is because we didn't tell PHP to show anything on the web page. Variable was declared, it got the value of 50, it was an integer type, but nothing was supposed to be displayed. So let's now let's move forward, and now what we will do is that we have a variable of value 50, and as I told you before, that all variables are of type variant. That is, everything will be changed according to the contents. So if we can copy this part and add another h1 tag with a separate PHP block using the same name, let's change its value and change it to stepforward.com, and now let's print it, echo. So what we will get is two different h1 tags. First will have a value of 50 and second will www.stepforward.com. refresh it. Yes, it is working now. 50 and note it down that both of these were the same variable. Num was changed. In any other language, programming language, this would definitely have been an error, but for languages, scripting languages like PHP, JavaScript, etc., this is totally perfect. This works well, very good, but there may be some problems, errors caused. Same variables change. For instance, if I wrongly typed it into none, it was a typing mistake, not an intentional one, and I outputted it num. So if I refresh it, of course, none is a different variable now, and num wasn't changed at all. It was still 50. So I'll get the value, or the output will be 50 and 50. This is a mistake, and this is we need to be very conscious about it, that we don't make this mistake in our code. So there has to be a method by which variables, we can monitor variables, which variables exist, which variables do not exist. And so we have a function called var dump. Var is basically a short for variable. Var is for variable underscore dump, just to dump it, throw it away. So num, let's var a variable dump num go, and echo this line so that we can only see the dumped variable, and I refresh it, and yes, it is telling us that this variable, this num50 variable, is of type int, and the contents are 50. 50 is the value stored in it. Let me output it over here again, refresh it, and now change back to num, refresh it, and now for the second time when we dump this variable, it is telling me that this variable, which was originally of value 50, is now a string. The length of that string is 15, and the contents of this string are mentioned in this double quote, www.stepforward.com. Let us count this, and if you count it, this is also 15. So this is the length that is shown to us over here. So variable dump is a very useful way of using knowing the variables. Another way is using a built-in function called get defined vars or variables. This might be a bit more than the starting for you, because get defined variables return an array, and we haven't covered array yet. So unlike var dump, which will output it automatically, we need to echo get variable. So it is telling us that this is an advanced type, it is an array, and we need to get the contents of this array now. So comment this line. There's a specialized function called print underscore r, which is designed or targeted for variable printing of arrays. So never mind this complicated code which has been outputted, but anyway, you can see that there is a variable named num, and its value is stepforward.com, and you can see another instance of this in another sub array of type underscore files. Anyway, this is let's not get into this anymore. Let's stick to variable dump. Okay, now let's, sorry for keep you holding, let's check the type of this variable with a built-in function called get type. This will only return us the type of that variable. These are helpful functions because and they, of course, they don't exist in other programming languages because there is no need for these type of functions. So first is integer, int, integer, basically both of them are the same thing. If I change it to decimal, it will show me double, and get type. So a similar function exists that is called set type. In this we can first give the variable and then give the type in which we want it to be converted in double quotes. So let me I had given float 50.5, it was showing me as, and now integer. I have changed it into integer, set type integer, and now this part is truncated. Of course 50.5 cannot be stored in an integer, so 0.5 is truncated, and it is truncating it, not rounding it. We can make sure of that also. First of all, let's variable dump it also. It is integer and it is 50. So let me change it to 50.5, and yes, it is still, the value is still 50. The value is truncating. Decimal part is simply getting slashed away because it won't be used. Okay, now so we have set type and we have get type, and in this part of the tutorial, this is, we're just touching the basics. So let me there's another function, a series of functions that is called is int. It will basically return us a true or a false. It will just take a variable and it will check that whether this variable is an integer or not. So we can use an if statement. We will cover if statements in the coming lectures. It is an integer, and else echo not an integer. Save it, comment this extra lines extra echo lines so that we only see that output mentioned in the if statement. Refresh it, it is an integer, of course. Now let me comment this set type function also. Refresh it, not an integer because now it is a double because of that value 50.9. So in this lecture we covered how to create, how to output files, understood how PHP works, and how we can use different variables and how variables can change their type and how to check their types. So inshallah in the coming lectures we will be going into more details.